Alrighty. Let's see what we got now. Alrighty. There we go. Let's see what we got now. Okay, let's move this down till it becomes visible. There we go. Alright, sorry about that, folks. Now you can hear me really good. Excellent. I'm clear now. Everybody can hear? We're heard now. Wonderful. I can't believe that. I just spent like a half an hour making sure everything worked perfectly. Sat down there, hit the button, boom. No sound. I don't know what it is. I need a sound engineer. Anybody want to volunteer? Well, at any rate, welcome. Welcome to Sunday afternoon, evening satsang. Glad you're all here. I titled this particular satsang to know yourself. And as people are joining, and remember satsang means communion with the truth. And it doesn't mean communion with somebody who knows the truth, telling you the truth. It means communing with the truth that is within you, which is the only place it could ever be discovered. So to know yourself is to know the truth. It's to know the truth of yourself. And of course, the truth of yourself and yourself would have to be the same thing, wouldn't they? I mean, really, ponder that for a second. The truth of you is the real you. It's the real substance of you. It's the fact of you. But this knowledge, this kind of knowledge, is Vedanta. Vedanta is the Sanskrit word that means the end of knowledge. And it doesn't mean that, knowledge all goes away. What it means is that it culminates. It's the ultimate knowledge. And the ultimate knowledge is non-dual. It's not two. Now, a lot of people get confused by the whole non-duality thing, but it's actually quite simple. It's knowing yourself directly, not via some other medium, not through some other agency or vehicle, including your own concepts and ideas you hold of yourself. It's knowing yourself directly. Every thought you have about yourself, however good it might be, is indirect, isn't it? It's not. It is a representation of you. It is not you. So to know yourself is to simply be in touch, consciously in touch and aware of your essential being, without any reference to anything else. No concept, no idea, no feeling, no ambition, no aspiration or goal, no hearsay, no religion, no spirituality, nothing except you. No external reference whatsoever. Now, there's only one way to do that. There's only one place to go for that. And that is to this very central, very intuitive, very effortless sense of your own being. Now, if that's not there, there's no sense of being, you don't exist. Right? So it's that fundamental. Every idea or concept or feeling or thought or memory or association or anything that would come later would be about that, right? It would be an approximation, a representation. It wouldn't be it. Like I've used the example of Statue of Liberty or Justice, right? Lady Justice, that they like to put out there. She's holding the scales, they're perfectly balanced, and she's got the blindfold on. Well, that's not justice, right? It's a representation of fairness and equitability, and the justice is blind to who it is it's doling out the justice to. It's a representation of something that cannot be conceptualized, really. It's more like, can anybody describe what love is, right? You really can't do it. We all know it. I mean, the first time you fell in love with in your life, you knew you were in love. Nobody had to tell you. It was not something you had to look it up in a book and say, "Oh, is this it? Well, I've got butterflies and I think about them a lot, and they turn me on, and blah blah blah." Right? You didn't have to go through any of that. You just knew. Now, how did you know? Right? And without all of the extra stuff, we kind of know that there's an essence to love. And it has is just such an array of different ways in which it's expressed. Everything from, platonic love and, friendship and brotherhood and sisterhood, up to romantic or completely altruistic, totally giving. But that's your nature. No matter how many different ways in which it gets described, it never captures it. But do you need anyone to tell you that you are? Do you need anybody to tell you that you are capable of self-awareness? Do you need anybody to tell you that you are experiencing? That there's this conscious entity that is experiencing everything? This is to really know yourself in the most intimate way. To know as a direct experience and not a conceptual representation. And that's the point that I really always try to get people back to. Because we're always being invited outward to look at the manifestation of who we are and mistake it for who we actually are. It's as if you looked in the mirror and mistook the image in the mirror for you. It's only a representation. You're the original. But the sun cannot see itself. Even though it's emitting light, and everything living on the planet owes its life to that light, the sun doesn't see itself. It only emits light. That's your nature. That's what you are actually like. And we only use thoughts and ideas to point you back to that essential, direct experience. Notice it's not conceptual. You don't need any thought whatsoever to know that you are, do you? You don't need anybody to verify it for you. You first have to verify them. Why am I listening to you? I have direct knowledge, which means you have as much authority to determine the true nature of your being as anybody on the planet. Doesn't matter how many letters you have after your name, doesn't matter how many accolades or awards, or how many Nobel Prizes you have won. None of that matters. Nobody has more authority than you to determine the nature of your existence, because you're the one experiencing it, and you alone. Nobody else knows what it's like to be you, to be as you. All right, let me check out the questions here. All right, let's see. Okay, we're through the no sound problem. Namaste from Ava. Hello, Ava. Rohan says loud and clear. Thank you. Infinity Coaching. Hi there, Saab. You can all hear me now, right? Ursula, sound is okay. Great. David and Elaine. Hello, folks. Hi, GP. Greetings from Southeast England. Lovely to see you. Still recovering here from the epic Wimbledon tennis final today. Well, I hope your recovery is a swift one, David and Elaine. Johanna from Jalisco, Mexico. Hello, Johanna. Daryl says, "Me too, David." Oh, another Englishman. I guess there was a tragedy in Wimbledon today. The epic tennis final today. I'm afraid I missed it, so I don't know what the outcome was, but it looks like guess it was pretty exciting. Rashko, hi from Slovenia. Hello, Rashko. Starlight Glimmer, hello, GP. No question right now, just here to listen. Good. That's good too. That's good too. Sometimes, the ultimate answer to all our questions doesn't come as some kind of concrete conceptual answer. It usually comes to just a sense of silence, inner quiet, where it's recognized that I have no question. Sometimes it happens that the moment a question arises, the answer appears instantaneously. But ultimately, all the questions just fade into that pregnant, infinitely intelligent silence. There's just simply knowing. The question, there's no question about your being, is there? You just are. And this is the way to approach it. You just are, not as anything. You just are. Pure presence. Not something that is present, but just presence itself. Presence without form. So, it's mind-blowing, but that's your actual nature. Presence without a form. All the feeling and sense of being present that we now attribute to the form, right? That we now attribute to the kinesthetics, the feeling of having your body, you find isn't your body at all. It is your presence, the presence of being. Being without being anything in particular, just pure, unfiltered, unbuffered being. Barbara, just saying hi and good night. That's right, it's very late where you are. Sally Atherton, hi GP. Sally also from Southeast England. I love watching your satsangs. I get so much from them. Wonderful. I do too. Not watching them. I never watch them, but I sure get a lot out of it. It's just this wonderful feeling to show up and find out what the infinite intelligence is going to have to say. And I got to tell you, sometimes I'm as surprised at the things that come out of my mouth as you all are. And sometimes I miss things. Sometimes somebody says something, that was really nice. I said that? right by me. Chrissy says, hi, good morning to all from New Zealand. Hello, Chrissy. Sally says, my question is, why is consciousness awareness described as love and happiness? To me, these are emotions which come and go. I experience awareness and as peaceful and still. That's very good. What I find is that when you see the awareness as perfect stillness, then you're absolutely right. That's all there is. That's all there is to it. But when you see that awareness as that which is open and receptive to everything, that has no resistance towards anything, has no preference for anything, that absolutely everything arises within it, without judgment, without criticism, without any kind of story or narrative about it, just a pure experience of it, that's love. So it's not just a feeling, an emotional feeling, like happiness being an emotional up and down. Yes, those come and go, but the actual existential nature of happiness is that stillness, contentment, completely unruffledness, and that sense of openness and complete and total acceptance of everything. That's love. And we can see it as love because it manifests as love. The beautiful flower is a manifestation of love. The unselfish thing you do, your friend needs something, you just give it to them, right? Or you kind of anticipate they might and you give it to them, right? Without expecting anything in return. Well, that's love. Well, what's the essence of that love? It's that same stillness, that same beingness. So you can call it love, you can call it soul, you can call it spirit, you can call it infinite intelligence, you can call it infinite mind, you can call it infinite creativity, you can call it love, you can call it all sorts of things. The it itself is beyond any words, but the perfume of it is love and compassion and tenderness acceptance. So it's kind of when you look at it as the pure stillness and pure awareness, it has a more masculine flavor to it. When you look at it from pure love and acceptance, that everything is okay, and that it adores itself, it adores its own being. It is in awe and in love with its own being. Then you see it's not a stillness that's flat, right? It's alive and rich and vivid, right? So yes, what we're doing is we're finding the essence of love in that beingness that gives rise to, expresses itself in all the kinds of loves that come and go and are there for a moment and then go on. And the same thing with happiness, the joy of getting something new, which is really fun. Everybody loves that. It's always exciting to get something new. It's really fun. But it's not permanent happiness, but yet it is an expression of the happiness that is permanent. Because all it means is that in that moment, more of that happiness is being experienced. An intense bubbling up of that happiness. It's like a wave has come up on the ocean. The ocean is still there. It's supporting the wave. The nature of the wave is the ocean. But then there's this, glorious hitting the shore. The same thing is true when some kind of my sweater was on a hanger, so it got stretched out. The same thing is true when an emotion arises. Emotions aren't bad. We just think that we're supposed to hold on to the nice ones and completely push away the not so nice, the ones we don't want. Right? But that preference towards things isn't love. Genuine love would say whatever arises is okay. And in fact, the very fact that something you would call uncomfortable has arisen means awareness has already let it in. Or, pure love has said fine. Because it had to arise before something else could arise to say, I don't like that, I want to push that away. Or I really like that, I want more of that. All of that is arising within the face of this pure awareness. But nothing that arises has its own nature. It's always a reflection of the infinite nature of the awareness itself, of infinite consciousness. Does that help clarify it for you, Sally? Beautiful question. James Breeden, hello. Oops. Oh, the questions are pouring in fast. Hello, GP. Hope you're doing well today. Hi to all in the chat. Hello, James. RB. Ooh, what's the point of existence? There is no point to existence. And I don't mean that nihilistically. What I mean is that if there was a point to existence, it would mean there'd be something out there making existence and giving it a purpose. It would mean that a purpose was external to it. The reason for being is to be. You can't separate the two. When something just is, it has no cause, it's timeless. To say that it has a point, really, you have to have duality in order to have a point, to have a purpose. Oh, this serves this purpose. Right? There's no point to existence. There's no ultimate purpose to existence. Purposes come and go. Points come and go. Right? There's a purpose right now. I'm doing this purpose right now. The purpose now is to share satsang with you. Right? That's a purpose. It's not permanent. Right? When the 2 hours is up and we shut down YouTube Live, and I'm going to help my son with a sledgehammer take out a granite counter because he's got a new one coming tomorrow. Right? That's what my purpose will be then. My whole purpose in life then will be to take out a granite counter and break it up into little pieces small enough that we can haul it off to the dump. So there's no ultimate purpose. Life just is. And just let yourself settle in with that for a little bit. Purpose is always something that kind of would be imposed from the outside. But life just is. Existence just is. Beingness just is. It isn't because something else needs it to be. Right? It's the ultimate. It's the alpha and omega. It's the beginning and the end. It's where everything converges. And there, even the sense of purpose or the point of it disappears in the pure beingness of it. Now that isn't a denial of things that having a point and having a purpose. Like I said, this has a purpose. And when you're all done with me here, you're going to do something else and it'll have a purpose. Maybe it'll make dinner. Maybe it'll go to bed. Maybe you'll got something fun planned. Maybe you're watching this in Hawaii and it's still 9 o'clock in the morning, right? And you got plans for the day. So the purposes will come and go, but you remain the same, which means you're even beyond all purpose. You don't serve a purpose. You just are. Being just is. Does that help, Arby? Isyel. Hello, GP. Can you please help with what to do when mind creates more distractions after emptiness is experienced? It's almost like mind got into attack mode to prevent me from emptiness, says the mind. Yeah, very good. Very perceptive. Even the desire to want to do something about it is a distraction, right? What we're moving towards, what the understanding that's dawning on you, the awakening that's happening, is that you are that emptiness. It's not a state that you arrive at, and then you have to deal with all the distractions of the mind. The distractions of the mind are not distractions to the emptiness. Is the emptiness distracted by the mind? No. Only the image you hold of yourself, the idea you hold of yourself, is distracted. So now you're in the emptiness, which is of course where you've always been and couldn't be anywhere else. And the mind comes along and says, you're distracted. And it shows you a picture of someone who is distracted and says, that's you. Well, is it? Or is it just a picture in the mind? The one who is distracted is the mind. That's the real mischief maker, not the distraction. There has to be someone there to receive the distraction and say, oh, I'm distracted. Well, who's that I? That's nothing but an idea in the mind. You are the emptiness, and it is in the emptiness that this is appearing. So you just notice it. It doesn't matter what appears in the mind. It doesn't matter what impulse is there. It doesn't matter what thoughts or feelings or sensations arise. It doesn't change who you are. You are still the one perceiving it. But you just get fooled by the sense that somehow you're not supposed to be distracted, and that somehow the one being distracted is you. The one distracted and the distraction are one. You can't have one without the other. There's no one being distracted. There's no distraction, is there? You can't have suffering without a sufferer. And the emphasis of non-dual inquiry is to dismantle the sufferer, not the suffering. The world is attempting to dismantle the suffering, and of course all it's doing is creating more suffering. That's not the non-dual approach. That wasn't the Buddha's approach. It's the sufferer, who we believe ourselves to be. That's the one that is creating all the mischief. Identifying with the image that has been presented to you of someone who's being distracted. You're buying that image. And it's not you. It's just an image. The mind doesn't say, hey, you're distracted. It shows you a you that you think you are, all distracted and confused, and the mind going every which way. But isn't that entire thing being perceived by that pure, empty awareness? What else is perceiving it? Including the idea that there's somebody who is distracted is appearing in front of the undistracted emptiness. Is the emptiness ever distracted? From what? Right? So you notice that the mind's distracted 1 minute, it's not distracted another. There's nobody there that's actually being distracted. Is that clear? Take another step back to notice that The one being distracted is itself an image presented to you to be accepted. And without that, the distraction collapses completely. There's no one to be distracted, which means there isn't any distraction. And the emptiness, the pure awareness, is not distracted. It couldn't be. It's witnessing every last bit of what's happening, is it not? Is that helpful? Thank you very much. Oh, you're very welcome. James says, love is not what you do for another person. If I love you and you don't love me, you feel nothing. Love is a state of being. Absolutely. It's a perfume of being. It is the nature of being itself. It's the completely open, accepting, yin energy of complete acceptance. To see things as pure awareness, we don't have to reduce everything down to this sense of emptiness where there's nothing there, right? Emptiness means it has no definable quality in and of itself, and yet it possesses all possible qualities that give rise to form, because a form is a very specific instance of a quality. But the source of that quality is not itself a thing that is defined, and therefore it's empty of any inherent kind of definition, which makes it infinite, right? Which makes it unlimited, which makes there be absolutely no restrictions whatsoever on what can be made manifest. If there was any kind of definition whatsoever to the source, there would be a limit on the expression, and it would also mean that the source is not infinite, because there would be a boundary to it. The only difficult part of this is that we're so used to thinking in terms of objects. And so when we begin the heading down the rabbit hole of non-dual inquiry, of course at first we're going to use the same kind of intellectual training and equipment that we've been using all along. But hopefully over time, and it certainly appears to be true because I'm noticing the quality of questions over time, that the words become more pointers than descriptors. Right? You can't describe the indescribable, you can't teach the unteachable, but you can point attention to a place and kind of show how to knock on that door so that when it opens you realize, as Rumi said, you've been knocking from the inside. Does that help? Chris Gill says, hello GP, good to see you again. After following non-dual teaching and understanding, it feels a lot different. I feel weird. Feels like something has died and something new has been born. That's a very, very accurate expression of it. Something has died. That kind of sense of birth and rebirth, death and rebirth, happens all the time through our lives, right? It's happening constantly. I've often made the point that I really miss my two sons when they were 5 years old, right? I mean, my now says like 44 and 43, right? But when they were 4 or 5 years old, I remember driving across them. I moved from Chicago to San Francisco, driving across the whole country with them. I mean, but those 5-year-olds, those little ones, are gone. You could even say that they died because they were, what arose in their place: a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 15, 20-year-old, and now I got a 44-year-old with a granddaughter and the like. So you can see that the sense of death is simply the idea that somehow I'm a fixed thing, right? What's dying is the idea of you being a fixed thing. And you're just beginning, your entire life is beginning to flow through the constant transformation that is the nature of life itself. The constant transformation, the constant flux and flow in front of the constant changeless. You're discovering yourself as the changeless, experiencing yourself as the changeless. Even though you know it's not you, it's a manifestation of you, it's the expression of you. And so there really is, when something we've really held on to tightly leaves, there can be a sense of a death, sometimes even grief. Right? It's like the loss of a loved one. So yeah, it is a deeply spiritual and religious experience. It isn't just intellectual. That your whole energy system on every level, thought, feeling, and sensation, begins to adjust itself to harmonize with and give expression to the reality of your being, which you are discovering. And that's of course what we're here to do, to know yourself, and for that direct insight into your nature to filter through and completely colonize and dissolve everything unlike itself, all the false beliefs and assumptions and energetic patterns, be completely purged from the system. Because the only thing that holds them in place is the idea that you hold of yourself. When you realize that the idea you hold of yourself is not you, never has been, never will be, then the real you can begin to emerge, and that real you will now take the place within the whole energy system, right, of the false version of you. The real master will step in, and the household will adjust itself to it. Buddha told the story about the guy, an important, wealthy man back in those times. Had to some royalty or something, so he had to go off to war, and he left his head servant in charge of the entire household. Well, it was a long, drawn-out battle. He was gone for 20 years. Got beat up a bit. When he finally came back, he knocked on the door, and they wouldn't let him in. I didn't recognize him. I don't know who this guy is. And so he instead he said, well, could you help me out? I need some food and stuff. Can I have a job? Can you? And so they say, okay, yeah, you have a job. And he worked in the kitchen, and he did a bunch of stuff. And little by little, people began to recognize him. All of the other servants began to recognize, until finally all of them, including the head servant, recognized that this was indeed the master of the house and that he had returned. This is a beautiful illustration of the awakening is not immediately going to be received with a parade by a nervous system or an energy system that has been operating under the premise of this separate self for literally lifetimes. Right? Not this particular self, but every lifetime has a different version of it, but it's the same essence. I am something, I am something, I am something. And that is the illusion that is being dispelled. But that energy of being somebody is still very present there. So as the true light begins to dawn, as the true nature of your being begins to dawn, and the master returns home, little by little it will colonize. It will be recognized. The false sense of self will dissipate, and all that energy now that has been holding on to the false self will begin to orbit around the true self. And that's when it goes from a vision to feeling to living, where your life literally is the manifestation of truth. That's the avatar existence, where your life, that's the sage. The sage is not someone who knows the truth. The sage is the truth appearing as a person. Thanks for that, Chris. Rohan says, awakeness, a constant state of noticing, perceiving. Is awakeness a constant state of noticing and perceiving? Yes and no. It is obviously constantly awake, and constantly aware. That's what it is. It is awareness, which means it can't be anything other than awareness. So it's never not aware. Awakeness is never anything but awake. You believe yourself to be asleep, but that belief is being held by awakeness, is it not? Right? But we confuse our attention with our awareness. Attention is something awareness is aware of. Attention is very powerful. It's necessary for human beings. Without attention, that is, the ability to filter out some things and focus on one thing, if we didn't have that, the sheer magnitude of all of the information that's striking our senses at any given moment would simply completely cripple us. There's nothing, I mean, it would completely overwhelm us. We couldn't do it. So attention is our capacity to kind of pick out of the back of this mass of information form. The reality is it actually creates the form. It doesn't pick it out. It's not there before it's perceived, but I won't go into that quite yet. So attention by its nature is a filtering mechanism to focus so it can see this and not that. That's why you can get really focused on something and not see anything that's going on around you. That's how magic works. Sleight of hand, and even the greatest magic tricks are simply a distracting of attention over here while they can do something right in front of your eyes that you don't see, because that's the nature of attention. But that attention is appearing in awareness. The awareness is not attention. If it was, then you'd be stuck in your attention. But notice you have times when you realize your attention has wandered. Well, how did you know that? If you were in the attention, you wouldn't have noticed, right? So something outside of attention is also aware of the attention. It's aware of beliefs, it's aware of assumptions, it's aware of everything. Everything comes and goes in it. We just think because something may go and there's no content there, that awareness isn't there. It's never the case. Awareness is your being. It's simply what is. It's your very existence. So it's never not there. There can be absolutely zero content. Nothing is happening. No experience whatsoever. No time, no space, no nothing. And you will be aware of it. There's never nothing. There's always the perceiver of what appears to be nothing. Every night you go into deep sleep and it's a contentless, dreamless, timeless. You're not there. You don't have a name. You don't have a form. You could be laying next to the most wonderful person you've ever met, the love of your life, and they're gone. They're not there. There's nothing there at all. It is a state of just pure awareness. Now that doesn't mean that's the ultimate state. We go to the state where there's absolutely nothing. It's never the true. It's never true. Universes are being created and destroyed constantly. The universe that existed when we started today is not the same universe that is here now. Everything is being generated spontaneously in this moment. There is no time. There's not this event causing this event causing this event causing this event. The seeing through of cause and effect, realizing that it was nothing but a projection of the mind, was the tipping point that Siddhartha became enlightened. It was at that moment when he saw there was no cause and no effect. It was all an immediate projection of the mind. Boom. That was the moment of the Buddha's awakening, which then just exploded through every aspect of human consciousness and dissolving every erroneous concept and assumption almost instantaneously. But that was the linchpin. That's where the needle got poked and the bubble burst. I think I may have gotten a little bit off your question, but I hope that answers it for you. For you, Rohan. Very important to distinguish that attention is just part of human nature, and don't confuse it with awareness. It is something that awareness is aware of. This attention will come and go, and we had earlier somebody, I'm distracted. Well, something noticed the distraction, right? Whatever noticed the distraction was quite clear that it's not distracted, right? So awareness and attention are not the same. Awareness is the infinite, attention is the momentary. But it is attention that gives rise to experience. It gives rise to form. Without attention, there's no form. There's just the potential for everything. Yeah, it goes pretty deep down that rabbit hole. Chris Skills, how long does this new understanding go on before it is natural to you? Who's the you you're referring to that it has to become natural to? Notice that behind your question is a picture of someone who wasn't awake, has now gotten awake, right? But might lose it at some point, or it isn't natural to, right? Notice all of that is a construct of the mind, which is still kind of trying to assert the existence of a separate self. An awakened separate self, a separate self that's on the path, that's really close, right? But you're the awareness that's aware of that entire scene. So the answer to your question is, how long does it take? It's now. It's what's hearing my words. It's what perceived that question as it formed, and the image of someone who is gaining the understanding but not established there yet, presenting that picture for you to buy as a fact. Awareness does not need to establish itself as awareness. It's what it is. And this is where we come to. Now this is, I'm giving you the highest stuff I can give you. There's some other times I might take it in a few levels, because we could go down a level and look at it. It's just a matter of being with it, constantly returning your attention back to it, and becoming more and more nuanced and subtle about catching when the mind is creating a sense of self. And of course, that's what I'm pointing to you right now. The mind is creating a sense of self that is being perceived by the awareness. You're believing that picture of you as a seeker that's going to eventually be established in that understanding. But the establishment in the understanding is to realize you've never been anything else but that. The establishment didn't take place. The awakening didn't take place. The whole path, your whole life did not take place. It was all an image flowing by the awareness that you are. Does that help you, Chris? Rohan says, still confused about attention. Was that before I answered or after? Can't tell because because we've gone quite a few more, so let me know if you're still confused. Rohan. Ducks. Hello, Ducks. Hey, GP. How do I let go? I try, but I seem to manage it only temporarily. Well, first off, I'd say, well, let go of what? And then I would say, well, who's letting go? You have a picture in your mind of you holding on. And you're believing that that picture is actually you. Does awareness hold on to anything? I'm really trying to bring your sense of self into awareness, so that awareness is your nature. It is not a state. It's not another being. It's not some divine thing. It's actually what is hearing my words right now. It's what you are. So if your nature is awareness, then the act of letting go has already happened. Awareness is never holding on. Everything arises and subsides without preference and without resistance, without attachment or without aversion. That's the nature of awareness. It simply arises and it subsides. So a picture gets drawn of a separate self who's been through a lot of stuff, suffered, and is finally on the spiritual path, has finally come to see the cause of suffering, and is diligently working on letting go of it, right? Letting go of the attachments, letting go of assumptions, letting go. It's really good. It's really good. But you want the quickest route? That's to see that entire picture of someone on the path learning to let go is a picture in the mind. It is a projection of the mind. And the one perceiving it doesn't have to let go of anything. And is not that picture. That is simply an image of somebody holding on. Who said that was you? Why are you believing that's you? And when you do that, you'll find that your hands naturally start letting go, because you are awareness, which is never held on to anything. It's like space doesn't hold on. The sun is zooming around, the galaxy. Space isn't holding on to it. Right? It's the ocean in which it's flowing. It's what makes it possible for there to be it at all. So, who are you? Are you the one looking at the picture, or are you the one in the picture? This is, I guess I should point out, I guess today I'm not making any concessions to the separate self today, right? I'm not going to give you any advice on how to let go. I'm going to show you that you've never held on. That the one that is holding on, that needs to learn how to let go, is not you. It's an image in the mind. And when you see that awareness, by its nature, there's not even anyone holding on to that. Even the one who appears to be holding on to that image is also an image. You are the awakeness. You couldn't be anything else. If you weren't awareness, this would be blank right now. There'd be nothing. There wouldn't even be a sense of your own existence. In fact, you would not exist. There can't be an existence without an awareness of it. That's why they refer to it as Sat Chit Ananda. Sat and Chit being, consciousness, bliss. You cannot have one without the other. That bliss is not an emotional high, though. It's simply quiet, peace, stillness, but openness, sensitivity, love. Right? I mean, it's... is that helping? I'm kind of going for the juggler today. Oh, this is so much fun. Rami Zalbak. Attention is consciousness focused on one thing of any type you put it on, and that is why you can't put attention on consciousness itself. You just experience as an absolute. Yes, that's correct, Rami. Yeah. It's a focus, right, that appears within consciousness. Thank God it doesn't limit consciousness. If it did, we'd be stuck in there forever. But we're not, because we're actually the consciousness to which the focus of attention appears. And focus of attention is very powerful. The three biggest human powers are belief, identification, and attention. Those create experience. That's the creator of worlds. Those three things right there. Wherever you put your attention, it will amplify what is seen in front of it. Which is why I invite everybody's attention out of form and into the formless. Which then puts you in the position to completely embrace all form without ever getting stuck in it. Yes, but isn't love a concept or a thought? Says Daryl Sanders. Yeah, for most, the experience of it, right? It's just, it's like music. Is music a concept? No, it's not a concept. I can conceptualize it and try, so I can talk about it, but music isn't a concept, it's a real experience. Love is not a concept, it's a real experience. We conceptualize about it, we form images of it, we categorize it, well, love is like this and it's not like that, and of course that's limited, right? It's as if we know everything there is to know about love, that we can actually categorize it so neatly, and that's just the arrogance of the human mind. But love is not a concept, life is not a concept, being is not a concept. They're real. And you experience them all the time. You're experiencing it right now. They are all aspects, faces on the pure consciousness. They are the nature of consciousness itself. They're kind of like the principle of all existence. Chris says, another question, GP. Any advice on finding the right job for oneself? It's my birthday. Today I'm 27. Wow, happy birthday! Happy birthday, Chris. I don't want to be stuck in a dead-end job for the rest of my life just to make ends meet. You won't be. The first thing I always recommend to people is stop fighting. Stop the struggle. Stop anticipating that your life is over. You're 27 and you're going to be in this dead-end job going nowhere for the rest of your life. It's simply not true. Every moment things are changing. Every moment things are growing. Every moment things are developing. The mission is to take what you know to be true and embody it in the moment, no matter what it is. Make this moment the divine moment. Make this moment a cosmic event. I told you, I think I've told once before, not very often, this particular story. One of the times in my life, it was a really, really dark time. Now, this is after my great experience on the bridge, where in regular conversations with God, but yet I couldn't make a dime. My ex-wife, the mother of my children, had, without my knowledge, stolen them off in the middle of the night. So they were down in Phoenix, and I'm working in a 7-Eleven in Illinois in the middle of winter, and it's Christmas time, right? So my kids are gone. I'm isolated. I'm making $3 an hour in this place. My job, I have to keep the manager, who was younger than I, and I wasn't even all that old. Hated my guts for whatever reason. He just did everything he could to make my life miserable. So there I am, working the midnight shift in a 7-Eleven, mopping floors. My job, keep the floor clean. Well, of course, the moment you do it, it's the Midwest in the winter, salt on the road, and it was horrible. Mop the floor. I'm sitting there mopping this floor, asking exactly the same question you did. What the WTF? Really? This is it? I thought after the big revelation and having a big awakening experience that it was just going to be rainbows and dolphins from then on out. I had no idea the kind of genuine transformation of the entire system that had to take place. And it took me a long time to surrender it, simply because I must be doing something wrong. This can't be right? Shouldn't I be experiencing abundance and things flowing to me and all of that? But at any rate, in that moment, as I was mopping the floor, I felt felt degraded. I felt useless. I felt like I had zero of anything. I'm just, mopping a muddy floor that somebody's going to traipse all over, and then if I happen to miss a spot, I'm going to get yelled at by some 7-Eleven. It's like, really? This is it? But as I was sitting there, mopping that floor, grousing, that same voice that had spoken to me many times before said, "You want to be dignified?" I said, "Yes, I'm looking for my dignity." He says, "Dignity isn't in anything you do. It's in you, or it isn't at all." It suddenly dawned on me that I was looking to what I was doing to give me the sense of value and the sense of dignity. And then the next thought, and really blasted me, said, which means that whatever you do becomes dignified because you do it. Blew my mind. That place shined that night like, it just glowed. It was so, I cleaned it so well. I was manifesting dignity. I wasn't trying to get it anymore. Within weeks, my entire life had changed. Some other jobs had opened up. After a series of events where I was accused of stealing, it got really bad, but it was completely unflappable at that point. And then, foomp, it went into a whole series of things that eventually landed me in doing computers. I was offered a job out in San Francisco, left Illinois, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. All within a very short period of time. Probably within a year, my salary had doubled and continued to double every year after that for a while. It was like, but it was that key insight. Now, you could have told me that. I was a smart kid. You could have told me, oh yeah, I would have gotten that. At this point I had some spiritual knowledge. Oh yeah, I would have gotten that. But I really got it because I was sitting there mopping a floor in the middle of Illinois with my kids stolen from me in the middle of the night. That brought that message home, where it probably wouldn't have any other way. So I'm slow to say, yeah, go out and, keep yourself open. Look for other opportunities, but always be, the big thing we're after here is to come to know yourself as you really are and discover what that means. To discover the inherent dignity, the inherent value, the inherent purposefulness that is this manifestation, this one right here. Right? This isn't a degradation of your human life like it doesn't mean anything. It does. It has an enormous purpose. This particular form that you're experiencing right now, everything about it has a purpose. It's not the ultimate purpose of you, and it's the ultimate being of you, but it is significant. You simply have to discover that you are the light that animates it. It has nothing to give to you. I hope that helps you, Chris. That's my granddaughter. I think you may be able to hear her screaming. It's nap time, and she's not particularly happy about that. Let's see. Tension itself is perceived in the field of consciousness, says Richard Cash Beats. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you, GP. So awareness being is unconditional love. Yes. Take all the conditions off of love, and you have pure love, pure awareness. Same thing. And isn't that good to know? Because a lot of times, the precision of the non-dual inquiry makes it seem, the emptiness becomes like cold, but the emptiness is the infinite compassion, right? Wisdom and compassion are two faces of exactly the same coin, and both are necessary. That's why the image of Canzione, Canon, a lot of different names, the goddess of wisdom and is also the goddess of compassion. They're the same. They're two aspects of the same thing. Without that precise wisdom, love becomes weak, victimized. Without the love, wisdom becomes harsh and unfeeling. They are a continuum, the yin yang. The male female principles are not abstract. They are the first visible signs of the totally invisible essence. So it's beautiful beyond words. It's perfect beyond words. It's freaking perfect. Let's see. Timmy. Hello, Timmy. I can see that I am the knowing factor of experience. Very good. The knowing factor that is looking through the eyes. The knowing factor that is hearing through the ears. I can't seem to get beyond that for now. Okay. I can't seem to get beyond that right now. What image are you looking at that has a sense of self, a person who can't get beyond it? And what would getting beyond that look like? Right? See, there's this idea, well, it's not this, right? It must be something else. Well, where did that idea come from? And is not this entire scene being perceived by exactly the same thing? It's just the sense of a separate self has arisen again, It's trying to recreate itself again, and now it's somebody who's close. I almost get it. I can almost see it, but not quite. What were the words you can't seem to get beyond that. To where? What if there is no beyond? What if this is it? And right now, the isness, the it, the real reality, you, are simply perceiving this image in the mind of somebody trying to go beyond. Is that not appearing to the same awakeness, to the same awareness? Even that strong impulse to identify with it is being perceived by it. You are the beyond, right? So it's like awareness going out looking for awareness. It's like the sun going out looking for light, right? God, I don't see any light anywhere. Oh, wait, look, the moon. There's light. There's light. Look, the moon. Oh, no, that's my light. It doesn't have any light. It's all my light. You are the beyond. That is the whole cosmic joke. Awareness going out to find awareness. Looking for awareness. You are the beyond. Now notice that the one trying to go beyond is nothing but a projection of the mind. And what it's projecting is simply a sense of a separate self. And since you are perceiving it, it's not you, is it? Is that sinking in? It's subtle, I know. And if you look at it from the point of view of unfoldment, your vision is becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. Or more accurately, consciousness is becoming clearer and clearer and clearer. Pure consciousness, pure awareness was never foggy in the first place. You are perfectly perceiving the sense of someone who's trying to go beyond. Your perception is pure, absolutely perfect. It is unhindered. It is unclouded. It is looking from the beyond at a sense of something trying to go beyond. Looking at it with a great deal of compassion, by the way. In fact, that the word Avalokitesvara, who was the one who dictated the Heart Sutra under the approval of the Buddha, which is one of the most important sutras of all. The word Avalokitesvara simply means one who looks down. The definition of the word Tathagata, which was another word for the Buddha, was the one who's gone beyond. And the mantra that ends the Heart Sutra, the ultimate mantra, the ultimate experience, the ultimate prajnaparamita wisdom, gate gate, padagate, padasangate, bodhisvaha, which means gone, gone, gone beyond, gone completely beyond. Hallelujah. You are the beyond. You can't get beyond, can you? Right? You realize that that's where you're looking from. Is that helping you there? Is that helping you? Oh, Timmy. Like the difference between scanning a room with a camera and then doing the same thing with your eyes. I think I answered it. Well, you'll be the judge of whether I answered it or not. Nothing more is coming at this point. Alex K. Hello, Alex. Can you speak more of his moment of enlightenment, the thought he had about no time? Well, the essence of the Buddha's awakening, and it's not an easy read, but probably the most powerful expression, most powerful sutra that's ever been written down is the Lankavatara Sutra. Almost nobody's even heard of it. I think I read it maybe the 5th time before the gears really started to click. I'm on number 7 now. It is that powerful, but it really hits right at the heart of the Buddha's teaching. It goes beyond all of the, the 5 skandhas and the ayatanas and all the various things, even beyond the 4 Noble Truths of suffering, which for many thought that was the ultimate teaching. It wasn't. Everything is a projection of the mind. Nothing exists independently from your perception of it. Our mistake is believing that the formations of thought, which are formed completely by the mind and perception, exist independently from the one perceiving it. That's the whole of it. And when he saw that, everything broke down. Time, space, matter, history, everything was gone. Because what's left? Images in the mind. So the entire universe became the mind. And he went beyond. His being, which had to be there first before even there could be a projection of a mind, was absolute, untouchable, unknowable, undefinable, and just was. That was the Buddha, the awakened one. When we see that our perceptions are creating the objects we perceive and not perceiving an object that exists independent of my perception of it, the universe as we know it collapses. Matter collapses. Objective existence collapses. Classical analysis collapses. Religion, economics, it all collapses. Because there is nothing other than your own mind. That's the only thing you see, the thoughts. And when you see that, you become free from them. They no longer have import. They have no more substance than a dream at that point. Can you see that? It's a wonderful... yeah, so he saw through time, because no object actually exists. Every object is a projection of the mind. So there are no objects. You see that? Nothing has an inherent existence, which means there's no time. That the object is being presented, is being manifested in this moment, period. And all there is this moment. So what looks like there's a continuity isn't. It is a spontaneously generated experience in this moment. And its only consistency is that it is being generated by the changeless. So you have the changeless generating what appears to be changing, and he even saw that nothing is even changing because nothing exists at all. Maybe I'll take some excerpts some week, if you guys want me to, from the Lankavatara, and kind of take them apart for you. As I said, start with the Heart Sutra if you want to dive in. It's much easier to digest. And again, the translations, the commentaries to get about that are from a fellow named Red Pine, who actually lives here in Washington. They're the best. There's some other ones out there, but he's like the best. His versions of it are the best. John M. Hi GP. Namaste. Hello, John M. What comes first, the body or the mind? They happen simultaneously. You can't have one without the other. Dependent arising is what Buddha referred to it as. If you look at the mind as an aspect of consciousness, as the creative aspect of consciousness, the mind as a thing disappears. It's simply the functioning of consciousness. It's consciousness in its dynamic aspect. If you look at the mind as like the psychological or emotional mind, it cannot exist independently of the body. So the appearance of a universe is the appearance of a mind. The appearance of a body is the appearance of a mind. You can't have one without the other. You cannot conceive of a body without a mind, right? Because the body is nothing but a thought. That's all it is. It doesn't actually exist. There's no object out there. It's a body. There's only your experience. We break the experience down to thought, emotion, and sensation, right? That's actually all you ever experience. And you could even look at those as different vibrations of the same thing, right? So there's just experience happening. And I call this sensation, and I believe that it originates from a body that exists independent of my perception of it. Not so. That is the whole mind-only, consciousness-only model that is Buddhism at its heart. There isn't anything out there being perceived. The out there is actually in here, which is nothing but the infinite self-awareness of the true self or consciousness. Walter Ousting. Sunday satsang every week? Yes, sir. Every week I can. And on those weeks I can't, I usually try to make a pre-recorded video, just so you get your satsang hit. Right? Wouldn't want anybody to go without. John says, how should we use attention? Focus your attention on that which is the most progressive, the most loving, the most kind, the most useful, the most significant, the most important. Since it is the power of creation itself, I think you should probably choose wisely where you put it. And you'll notice that most of the time where we put our sensation, there's always people trying to grab your attention to amplify themselves. And we find ourselves our attention being drawn to habitual thoughts and feelings, right? So on a certain level, the metaphysics, the law of attraction kind of thing is correct in that, that the focus on negative thoughts is only a habit, right? And if you focus on that, it's going to amplify them, and it's going to color the experience. So if you take charge of that and you start focusing your attention elsewhere, your experience is going to change. Now, if you take a big step back and realize that the focus of attention itself is appearing in a bigger awareness, you've become the master over it now. And now it's the creative power, it's the logos. It's belief, attention, and identification. That creates the universe. So yeah, pay attention to what it is you're paying attention to and allow the deeper awareness of consciousness, which is unconditional love, to guide where that attention goes. And you'll find resistance because there's habits there. There's habits of wanting, this is real. As you begin to realize that everything you perceive is being generated by you and not perceived by you, then even the authority by which, this is true, this is the objectively true, you need to put your attention here, this is reality, you go, no, it's not. It is not. There is no objective reality. None. Whew, big one, isn't it? Oh boy. Thariapolo? Sounds similar to my story, GBU. Oh. Happy birthday, Chris. Grade 711 story, GP. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was not my ambition. I really... John M., is there any solid conviction? I really don't see it. I'm not sure what your question is. Is there such a thing as solid conviction? If you rely on the mind for solid conviction, you're not going to find it. And the people who try to make solid conviction become really cold and narrow and petty and fundamentalist because they're trying to hold on to something that you can't really have a conviction on. You're holding on to something that is in fact ephemeral by nature. Are you the self? You don't need conviction for that to be true. So it's a different approach. You are simply showing yourself the truth. You're becoming you see it so clearly that you don't need a conviction that it's true. I mean, you don't need a conviction that 2 + 2 = 4, do you? I know it does, right? The moment it's seen, conviction, it's just there. Well, yeah, it's true. It's a self-evident truth. The word conviction doesn't really even capture it anymore, does it? Okay. So, but again, we need a sense of conviction, a sense of, we don't want to be waffling. In everyday life, conviction is very important. It's just not existential, right? When when I push everybody down the rabbit hole like I do, it's not like, abandon your life like it doesn't matter. Pay attention to all of it. But don't let that overwhelm the existential inquiry as to who are you really? Who is it that's actually aware of all of this stuff? Who is the essential awareness? Who am I without the conditioning, without the thought patterns, without the memories, without the name, without the take away everything that has been added later? And who am I? That becomes the most important question to ask. And to ask it from the right point of view. Not just the mind trying to create a new picture of who you are, but a complete dissolution of all pictures into the pure experience of who you are. Rohan, should we put off our efforts into investigating the falsity of the image we hold of ourselves? Or should put our efforts, put our efforts into investigating the falsity of the image we hold of ourselves? Yeah, let me balance that for you though, okay? Yes, the answer is yes. Because it's being seduced by the false version. Believing the false version of you to be true is the mischief maker. That's what causes all the trouble, all the suffering. To question that, to call that into question is wise. That's the neti. I am not that. And to see it as just an image of the mind, and therefore not anything substantial, just a picture, just a belief, just a thought form, and therefore not myself, because it could not exist without me. Thoughts can't think themselves. There must be consciousness there to perceive them for them to have any existence at all. And you could tell a thought has no existence before I think it has no existence after I've thought it, and it could not possibly have any existence without me. Therefore, I am prior and more fundamental to any thought I have. And then you notice that there's this impulse. It's really an energetic impulse to identify with the image that's being presented. I am the seeking self. Well, seeking is happening, for sure. But are you that, or is that just an image in your mind? So yes, to question that. But the only caution I have is don't let it get too heady. Sometimes just sink back into the quietude, let it all go, drop all questions, and just feel the sense of your own existence. Because that's what you are. That's what it feels like to be you. And it's even more subtle than that because you're the one that's even feeling the sense of existence. You cannot be felt. What you feel is the manifestation of you. You yourself are not a feeling. Is that so? It's this. In Zen they say, when to kick, when to hug, right? When to push, when to pull. There's a mastery that gets acquired. Is one's exactly the right way to just be so precise you leave nothing standing, and one is you just stand back in just a total embrace of resistanceless love. And that's the art of it. Don't forget the heart of it as you're taking apart all of this. Don't let it take on a heaviness. That's why I point that out. So I like the Sufi approach, right? Make sure you dance, right? Don't just dance, right? Love, right? Do good things for others. Enjoy, right? All the while being sensitive to what is it that's actually enjoying. What it's that's actually having the experience. Right? This isn't a denial of life. It is finding the essence of life, which is your very being. Hope that answers it for you, Rohan. Sophie, hello GP. All I feel that I am learning is to find the strength of presence to hold this separate self as she goes through ongoing suffering. To care about her as a true mother would. Thank you. Yes. Yes, it starts there with this total embracing compassion. But then you need to bring in the masculine wisdom to start looking, well, who is this suffering separate self? Is she a reality? Or is my belief in her as a reality the actual cause of suffering? Remember, the idea isn't just to comfort the suffering, it is to eradicate suffering. And in order to do that, we have to eradicate the sufferer. Now, it's beautiful you pointed that out after I'd just been answering the question for Rohan about the inquiry, is that the other side of this is just this enormous compassion that allows you to completely, without resistance, accept everything you are feeling just as it is. But don't stop there. It's not just about being continually compassionate towards this sufferer. It's about alleviating the suffering, and that means seeing through the illusion of the sufferer. Now, in fact, you already have, to a certain degree. The very fact that there's you referring to being with this compassionate one, or with the suffering one, means that sense has already happened. There's already a separation that's taken place. Now start questioning the reality of that sufferer. Is this who I am? Does this sufferer exist at all other than a picture in my own mind? Is it an objective fact? Is it an entity? Right? You do that without becoming, pushing it away. The same level of openness and compassion, the same level of willingness to feel and be present is there. And also the wisdom that's looking, what is this? Is this a reality that I'm saddled with? Or is this a projection of the mind that has no objective existence? And therefore it can completely dissolve into the ananda of pure peace. Thank you. Thank you, Sophie. Wouter. Did I say that? Wouter or Wouter? Did I say that correctly? Oh boy. Can you talk about oneness? Comparing light and object? Feels like two. Feels like two isn't two. Yes, it does feel like two. There's a sense of being someone, isn't there? I mean, I have a sense of being someone. I don't think of myself as you. I don't think of myself as, the orchid back there, or the other ones. Anybody knows how to revive an orchid? I'm really not very good with plants. I'm trying to be better. And this one has gotten kind of droopy. I watered it the way they said. Anybody has any ideas, please let me know. So I'm not that, right? And yet I am. This is the nature of true non-duality. It is neither this nor that. It is not. There's other and me as a self, nor is that everything disappear in this homogeneous oneness, right? Oneness is the reality that is experiencing the allness. Right? So I have a sense of being someone, but I know that I'm not that someone, right? The true, eternal, infinite self expresses itself in selfness, you might say. So everything has an individuality to it, doesn't it? It reflects a sense of self, but there's not a self there, right? It's as if, the universe, a bunch of energy condensed into a particular form, right? This form, and an intelligence is expressing itself through the form. It isn't limited to the form, nor is it the form. That which is animating this body that's talking to you right now is not limited to this body. It is not that. But this body, this particular form, is expressing that selfness, the isness, the beingness. Everything expresses that beingness, doesn't it? Everything. My Buddha, my bunny, my crystal ball, the microphone over my head, the screen in front of me. So the one reflects itself in the many. The essence of them is one. That's the essential unity. The So the manyness is not individual entities. It is one entity known in an infinite number of forms. And literally infinite, inexhaustible, on forever, never changes, world without end. Amen. Does that answer it for you, Worcester? Ann Kaufman. Hello, Ann. Been watching a lot of Muji and Papa G. Good. YouTube. Dropped I and no person, nothing to do and no person. So truth is nothing left without I. Not sure I quite understand that, but the dropping of the no person, correct. Because person, when I say there's no person, what I mean is that there's no entity. There's not a bunch of selves. There's one self manifested as multiple forms, right? So the idea of each individual self being an entity is the person, which is an idea projected on the form. It exists only in the mind, not in the actual form itself. Now, the form itself is an image in the mind, but it is an image that is expressive of the self. The sense of that being a separate identity, that's the illusion. That's the snake in the rope. So there's no person, there's nothing to do, and there's nobody doing it. Now that gets very confusing for people. What that means is that things are just happening. If you really look at it, the doer is itself being done. Where do you find the origin, the starting point of creation? You can't. Everyone who's doing themselves is being done, right? They too are an action, a happening, a bunch of things functioning. And you look closely and there's no self there. There's no doer. Doing is happening, stuff is happening, but there's no doer of it. The doer is a projection on what in fact is simply the infinite, illimitable functioning of life, with nobody doing it, right? We picture, God as the creator, but that's a projection of a human self onto God as creating in a moment in time. Well, God's timelessness. Where did it start? Creation, therefore, is the spontaneous generation in this moment. It's not an act of will. It's not God pondering, I think I'm going to make this, because the very act of pondering it is creation. So before it even could decide whether he was going to be doing it or not, it would happen. Right? So it is the spontaneous arising in this moment of the perpetually, eternally unfoldment of the divine nature, of the nature of being itself. God, it's so hard to put into words sometimes. Sometimes I just feel like I'm finding those words like, whoa, work. Anyway, there's nothing left without I. Yes, without I, there's nothing. The opposite of I is nothing. And since I, there can't be an opposite because nothing is nothing, right? I mean, really, there's no opposite to I. There's only I. That's all there is. I heard once that the Quran, I don't really know much about the Quran, starts with, there is no God, there's only God. Love that. I love that line. I heard somebody quote that. I just love that line though. There's no God, there's only God. There's only that one. Wherever the eye lands, it sees the face of God. That's a Sufi saying. I think it was Rumi. Dale Klinghorn. Hey GP, what shall I do about physical ailments? I have skin rash, eczema, or some type of fungal infection. What can I do? Have I manifested this and should put all my faith in doctors or myself? Well, I never tell anybody. It would be irresponsible in my position to tell anybody, don't go to a doctor. Of course, go, have it checked out. It may be a minor thing that a little bit something could adjust. If not, if there's something more energetic going on, I would, in a reconciliation EFT, be present with the energy behind it. Right? If it's not something that's an immediate thing, there's some little physical adjustment that can take place, it means there's some kind of energetic thing going on. So we need to become curious about it. Drop your ambition for a cure and become curious about how this whole thing has happened. Turn it into an existential inquiry, right? How is it that we can get diseased? How does this happen? What is being reflected here in my skin? What's the energetic thing there? Now, please let me point out that any kind of physical ailment or condition or anything is not an impediment to knowing who you are. And sometimes you can completely wake up and still have things hanging around. Nisargadatta smoked, chain smoked, all his whole life, even though he woke, even after his awakening, and he was a fully enlightened sage, continued to smoke for the next 50 years. Ended up dying of throat cancer. So nothing stands in the way of you realizing your true nature, who you actually are. So let's make that really clear. It is not an impediment. So now we can turn our attention to, well, how do we make it more comfortable for this, right? Yeah, it can be disturbing. I totally get it, right? So now it becomes curious because it's not interfering with anything. It's not interfering with the most important thing, right? So good, we can set this aside. Whew. Now we can just deal with it compassionately, loving it, and look at it. And say, what is it? Things like that I will often use. First, I'll have a conversation with it. I'll just have somebody sink into their body and become aware of the own energetic patterns that are going on. Become really sensitive to what you're feeling. And when you think about this particular ailment, notice reactions within the body. There's an energetic pattern going on that's producing it. That's where it's manifesting. Could be a deep trauma, could be a million things. So many things that we don't have the intellectual capacity to figure it out. Right? It's too complex. The mind just can't go that fast. But at the level of infinite intelligence where we're working, it can. And it just reveals itself. So first off, it does not matter whether it's there or not. So completely let go your attachment as to whether it should happen or not. Which means let go of your judging of yourself if you do something and it's still there, right? It's really, really important because that's a way we bring ourselves down in our own estimation, and we really do hinder our sense of connection to others and to the truth. And then I would also use EFT on it because it's proven itself to be very effective at helping the redirecting and the correction of the flow of energy that is creating it. You could look at acupuncture and the like, and there's some other stuff. EFT is just a derivation, a very simplified derivation of acupuncture. So just examine all the things that are available to you, but take it as an opportunity for an inquiry into your own energetic stuff. Look at it as a way of exposing other ways in which you've identified with the separate self, because that's really all it is, right? And just completely let go of that. Once that identification isn't there anymore, it's likely that the symptoms will subside. They certainly won't bother you anymore. It won't matter to you anymore because you'll be beyond them. Then they could come or go, and it won't. And it's not something you'll mind. But remember, don't let it be a distraction or from the ongoing inquiry into who your real nature is. It cannot interfere with that. Matter of fact, everything in your life actually pushes you towards it. So I hope that answers your question there, Dale. Alex K, thank you. You're welcome, Alex. I wonder if you're the same Alex that was at the meetup yesterday. Anyway, Lighty. Hi, Lighty. Hi, GP. Trying to focus, but I have very noisy neighbors. My irritation angers me. I try to question who is the I that is irritated or desires silence, but anger is still felt. Yeah. And the problem is? Just continue to inquire, because the object of the inquiry is to discover who you think you are and then let go of it, right? The object of the inquiry isn't to get your neighbors to be quiet. It's not even to get rid of the anger. The anger will go by itself when there's nobody left to be angry, right? And remember, the point of doing an inquiry about who is it that's angry and irritated isn't to get rid of the anger and irritation. It's only the self, the false self, that wants to get rid of, that wants to improve. I don't want to be angry, right? Now it's the spiritual version. I should be angry. I should be Om Namah Shivaya all day long, and it isn't so. You are the one that is aware of the anger arising, so there's no need for it to go away for you to be who you are. Nor does it need to go away for you to recognize who you are. Believe me, fully enlightened masters will get angry. Anger will come up. For them, it's not a problem. It's like, oh God, I got angry. This is terrible. I shouldn't do this. It's just, anger is there, anger's gone. They hold on to nothing. The anger arises, the anger goes. Sometimes anger is necessary. I get real angry with the things that are going on in my country. They're insane. They're stupid. They're brutal. They're horrific. It's headed down the wrong road. I'm angry about it. I don't indulge it. I become miserable about it, right? Something goes, God, that is stupid. I haven't lost my sense of equanimity or good judgment. So what your goal here is to reach the place of equanimity where no matter what happens, you are equanimous. So a noise happens, the nervous system reacts with a sense of irritation, I don't want that, and a sense of anger, why are they doing that? They shouldn't be doing that. Now just examine all of those thoughts. Why shouldn't they be doing that? Oh, there's no reason. I don't want them to do that. I prefer to be quiet. Great, okay, good. So now there's nothing to be irritated about. It's just I prefer quiet, I don't have quiet. So now the anger, that can dissipate because there's nothing to be really angry about. You're just simply now being with the desire to have more silence, and then you're not getting it. Wonderful position to be in. To see now, I have a preference and a desire. I have circumstances that are not meeting that desire, and I'm lashing out with anger at what I think the cause is. Well, that's not the cause. The cause is that I want things to be different than they are. And that's where the anger comes from, and that's where the annoyance and irritation comes from, not the circumstance. Things aren't the way they are. Now you can trace that even further. Well, okay. Behind that, there's got to be an image of a self holding that desire and insisting that it should be that way. And there's the end of the story. When you find that one who's holding that picture, that is in the picture, and that you're not in the picture, that one dissolves. And with it will dissolve any kind of irritation. And at that point, the noise will be there or won't be there. And it's highly likely that it'll just dissipate. It happens. I like silence. I like a lot of silence. Even when I was playing a lot of music, I like it. Sometimes I don't have it, right? And I can feel myself going, and then I go, can I get out of this situation? No? Okay. Then I completely surrender to it. And then I find with no resistance, there's no irritation, there's no anger, there's nothing, because there's nothing to react. The resistance is the functioning of the ego. Resistance and ego are one and the same. The ego isn't just a thing, it's a name for a function. That function is anger, resistance, attachment, aversion. That's the ego. It's a function. It's not a thing that is resisting. It is simply the function of resistance that has been personified and owned as if it were a personal possession. It's not you. It is simply a reactive pattern. When you see it as a reactive pattern, it ceases to control you, and now you can just take your hands off of it. Without your attention or your anger or your agreement with it or your continuing of the story with it to sustain it, because your attention is the energy that plugs it in. Without attention, without giving it its credence, without belief in it or identification with it, it has no energy of its own. Right? It's like the solar light, you know. Without the light, it's dark. Put the light on it, it illuminates. It has no energy source of its own. You're the energy source. Does that help, lady? Oh, is that lady? Yeah. Am I doing the right thing to accept this? Did I make it clear for you? Yeah. Accept. I don't mean acceptance as in just complete, as in resignation. Acceptance means I stop fighting my own feelings. I'm not resisting my own feelings. I'm allowing myself to feel them. And without resistance, the suffering in those feelings begins to go down. And when the suffering goes down, because resistance and suffering are synonymous, a completely different experience happens. Right? Suddenly that which was irritated is gone. And with it maybe completely the irritation, maybe even the preference. Maybe you want to actually kind of like the noise. I like it. It's helpful. Maybe not, or maybe they'll go away. But the dynamic will change because you've just changed. Your universe will now change in some way. But first off, even if nothing out here changes, you will become equanimous. And that's what we're really after. You will stop suffering, right? Because you'll no longer be identified with the sufferer. Right? Is that clear? David and Elaine, thank you, GP, for always pointing us back home. Your words resonate completely, because that is what is seen and known here. And your pointing always brings us back to the knowing. Wonderful satsang. Thank you. That's my job. And, once you see it, it's like, oh my God, it's ultimate facepalm. I missed that? Right? It's the cosmic joke. What can I say? And the joke's on me. Chris Kell says, thanks, John. Oh. Wooder says, no objective reality. Don't we all see the same object, sun, tree, etc.? Yes, because we're all the same consciousness. That's why we're saying the same thing. It's not because they're out there somewhere and we're all different consciousnesses perceiving it. We are one consciousness perceiving everything within this universe. The one consciousness is perceiving all of it. And so, yes, it's perceiving it as you over there, it's perceiving it as me over here, and it's perceiving it as, like the cat downstairs, right? But it's all the same, just like it's the same space. They all are all in the same space, right? It's not there's a different space over there than over here. Consciousness is an indivisible whole. And therefore, consciousness, the one consciousness, is seeing everything. So you can't see it like there's me with my consciousness and you with your consciousness and we're perceiving the same thing, right? That makes consciousness this thing. And then somehow I'm in my own little world seeing everything. Well, then what's everybody else? Well, you break that down. Consciousness does not have a boundary. It is not contained within this body. It is not a person. It is not a personal possession. It is not a finite form. It is the infinite awareness of all things. And therefore, it and it alone is conscious. So there aren't many people perceiving the same thing. There's one consciousness that perceives everything. Consciousness must be indivisible. Otherwise, it's not infinite. It's got a boundary. It's got a line around it, which makes no sense. It's like space having a boundary. Well, what's on the other side? Well, space. What's on the other side of consciousness? Consciousness, right? When you see it, there can only be one of them, which means the awareness here and the awareness there are the same. It's the same awareness. There's a sense of being an individualized self, but that sense of being an individualized self is being perceived in consciousness. The consciousness itself is one. That's what the word Buddha means. When he announced himself, asked, who are you? He said, I am the Buddha, the awakened one. Not one who has awakened, one of many. That's the way we see the sage. But the sage isn't someone who's awakened. It is the awakening manifesting itself as someone. Only consciousness is conscious. Only awareness is aware of awareness. Only awareness can be aware of my words. There aren't two of them. David Smith, love that mopping story. No questions here. I loved it. I had all sorts of wonderful things happen to me during that period of time. And it was hard for me because I really had this idea that somehow, because I'd had this major awakening and I'd seen through things, I was constantly being, every time I turned around, this inspiration, insights. It was just like, they were coming so fast and furiously. And I thought, and I couldn't reconcile that with the fact that my life just sucked. I was incompetent, I was dysfunctional, I couldn't make anything work. Which went on, I had that awakening at 19. I had another major one like 3 years later. Then all sorts of being, constantly. There wasn't a day go by, there was just this insight that was absolutely mind-blowing. I'd share it with people and they'd throw rocks at me. I was just completely dumbfounded. And it was probably around for the next 7, 8 years before the rest of me had started to really align. I mean, I had a terrible childhood. I was a dysfunctional kid in a dysfunctional family. My mother was crazy. The environment was insane, right? So I had no idea what normal was. I had none of that. So it was really perplexing to me because I thought it was just going to be, just really rainbows and dolphins from there on out. And it wasn't. It was really a shock. It was for a little bit, and then it was just thump, a total collapse. But I see now that was part of, it was the most important part of actually discovering the whole picture. The opening of the heart, the compassion, the dealing with suffering, the true nature of awakening, and to really come to understand how the whole sense of a separate self gets created and locked in and feels so solid. That took decades to do, and I didn't even know that's what I was setting out to do at the time. Remember when my awakening took place, I was a kid in the middle of Illinois. It wasn't even, there was nothing available. Course in Miracles hadn't even been written. I mean, there was just nothing. I was just kind of on my own trying to figure out what the hell had happened. And at first, my conclusions were not very solid, to say the least. It took a while for the whole thing to sink in, but when I look back on it, it's just so much grace. So much grace. When I'd really get into utterly dire straits, some little miracle would occur. And I thought, well, that's it. Okay, I don't have to worry. And more dire straits. Finally, it really brought out of me all the arrogance that remained, all of the idea that things, the way I thought things should be, which also alleviated a lot of the internal struggle, the pressure, the pain, the lack of wisdom, just the lack of common sense. Very gradually, those all got remedied, for decades, right? Till finally the deeper clarity and the capacity to teach it and the capacity to see what was needed in the moment began to awaken. So that mopping story was really very fun. Didn't feel like, that's not the only nut I was mopping. So it was like, it was not a one and done kind of thing. Yeah, I was a tough case. I appreciated that. The juggler for sure. Blessings. Thanks, John. Johanna, every question is mine too. We really are one. Yes. Yes. Every question is your question. Every answer is your answer. So, I'm not going to get to the rest of these. We've got about 8 minutes left, 10 minutes left here. I'm probably not going to get down to the bottom of this. But if I don't answer your question specifically, or maybe you just didn't feel like you answered, or didn't know how to articulate it, maybe you even didn't know what the question was, it's more of a feeling, it's getting answered. Right? because the very same energy that's impelling the question is answering the question. It's all coming from within you. My lips are moving, but it's really your voice. It's the voice that is all of ours. Robert Hill. Hey, G. Mr. G. Last night I hugged a small boy in my dream, telling him everything is okay. In the morning, I realized the boy was me. Did the reconciliation meditation a few days ago. Coincidence? No. No. That's the opening. The inner reconciliation is simply the opening of the heart to the nature of pure awareness, where nothing needs to be excluded. And that little boy was you, who had been traumatized, pushed away, didn't get what he needed, felt isolated, and in that dream, you and he, which were really one, right, were reunited. You've always been one. It's the trauma which creates the imaginary separation. It's like, the inner child work and stuff, which is really beautiful work. We're so used to thinking it as this other thing in me, and it's not. It's you. It's just the aspect of you that has been disowned, and you realize that you're one. It's a different aspect of you. It's a different face on the same soul. And so, yes, the inner reconciliation meditations and classes and all the courses, and, I urge people to take them. They're good. If I do say so myself. They open up that space, the heart opening, that lets the non-dual wisdom sink into the whole body, because you lose that resistance. You lose that sense of knowing what's happening. You become very open, very teachable, and you become very sensitive to the universe that's within you. And all of the conflict and trauma and suffering that's gone on, that is within you, that is reflective of everyone. And so it's beautiful when a few days after the meditation, as the whole thing seasons and settles in and colonizes, then suddenly something just pops to the surface and a natural reconciliation takes place, and the two become one, because that's what reconciliation is. So, thank you, Robert. Hi, GP. Could you please explain what the ego is in real simple terms? Thank you and good night. Sure. In real simple terms, it is simply the idea you hold of yourself and believe is actually you. That's it. It's not a thing. It's not an entity. We all have a self-image. When we believe that that self-image is who I am, and I identify with that picture, my body, my life, my memories, my associations, my limits, my fears, my worries, my doubts, when we identify with that, which is just an image in the mind, we create a sense of self. That is the ego in a nutshell. The false self, the ego, the small self, the person, all different names for the same thing. Right? It's not an entity. It's simply a thought form. And when that thought form is believed to be objectively myself, this is what I am, me, who is not a thought form, brings it into an existence. It appears to be real. It appears to be living and influential. You literally crawl inside this little box and stay in there and think that's who you are. The whole idea of seeing it as an idea, the egoic sense disappears. And if you just see it as a thought form, there's no more ego, because there's no more identification. So the ego only arises with identification with the thought form. And the thought form, it doesn't even have to go away before you see that it's not you. But it probably won't dissolve until after you've seen it, it's not you, because the idea that it is you is what sustained it. So the ego is just believing about yourself what isn't actually true. It's believing an image of yourself rather than the reality of yourself, which is the one perceiving the images. So when that sense of identification returns back home to the place of perceiving, which is where you always are. The I goes back home. The ego ceases to have any even apparent existence. It never had an existence. But even the apparent existence it has falls away. And you see, it's just a ghost, the ghost in the machine that you believed was there. It's as if, I use the example of imagine a very sophisticated robot, and we're getting there. You know, it's not going to be too long where there are going to be robots that are so lifelike and so good at learning and responding that we're not going to be able to tell they're robots. Now, imagine that. You would naturally project on that a self. You would think there was a self-aware, sentient being responding, wouldn't you? When there isn't. It is only a bunch of reactive, very sophisticated reactive functions. The human nervous system, energy system, body is exactly the same. It is not a self. It is a very sophisticated, complex set of functioning. That consciousness, which is the self, has projected a sense of self on it. That's why what Buddha always says, there is no self in persons, in objects, or in teachings. They have no inherent existence. The self is projected on it, a projection of the mind. It says that 1,000,000 times in the Lankavatara Sutra. So you can see, just like the robot we create, the organic robot, that is this body-mind continuum, doesn't have a self. When I think it does, when I project the self, that is the creation of what we call the ego, the false self, the person. When we see that it is just a thought projected on a functioning, consciousness becomes liberated from that identification, and, interestingly enough, the form becomes liberated from the containing of the form. The form is now free to just move in whatever way it needs to. It's no longer contained by this idea of who you think you are. Does that answer for it? I hope that was simple enough for you, Evan. For everybody, actually. Delgado. Hi, GP. Thank you for your wisdom. It's not mine. Don't own it. How can we respond to mistreatment or insults from others with this understanding? How to remain unaffected? And what would be an appropriate response in the moment? Thank you. Namaste. You're welcome. Well, remember, nobody can do anything to you. You are reacting, right? So we want to become conscious of what's reacting. What it really is that there's a preset set of programs in the nervous system. Again, no person, no consciousness, nothing's really there. Just reactive patterns, right? A certain thing happens, somebody says something, it triggers a reaction inside of it. None of this has a person, right? None of this is consciousness. Consciousness is watching the entire thing. But now, there's this unpleasant feeling. I have been mistreated. Who said? Who's saying that? His awareness said, I've been mistreated. Right? Has God said, don't say that about me? You know, God being offended. I love the way that fundamentalists talk about it. You're an offense to God. What? Infinite intelligence gets offended at what? It's such an absurd idea. But you can see there's a reaction of being offended. I have been mistreated. All of a sudden, now all of this is just a reactive pattern. Without your identification, you can sit back quite amused and watch it. And it'll eventually just fizzle out. So, but the moment you take possession of that, I have been insulted. I have been mistreated. Nobody should do that. Who are you then? Who have you just become that's now taking this position of self-defense? Look at that really closely. And the closer you look, the more laughable it becomes. It's a reactive pattern. Nothing else. It's like, somebody hits this key on the keyboard and this letter shows up. That's how much intelligence there is in it. None. There's no not cognition. There's no sentience. All the cognition and sentience is simply watching it happen. And simultaneously, the moment the reaction takes place, there's another part of the programming which gives rise to a sense of self that takes ownership of it. That sense of self is so subtle that we don't realize it because we think we are that person, right? But you realize you're not that person. When that sense of self arises to take ownership, you're going to witness that too. Go, oh yeah, there it is. No big deal. And then the entire thing becomes apparent, and it has no more power over you. It has no more authority. You're free. Monica says, thank you. You're welcome. Remington says, no questions today. Late to join. Thanks for being you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for answering my questions so articulately. Came from Lighty. Popey. Hi, Popey. Good to see you. Love your videos. Thank you. Pheromons. Hello, G. I got a deep insight when listening to Satsang called No Person. I was looking for the quote, when the Buddha awakened simultaneously. I don't remember where I found that. It was actually Genpo Roshi, one of my Zen masters, who shared that with me. I'll see if I can find it. But the quote is simply that when I attained Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, which means the great unparalleled enlightenment, simultaneously all beings attained the great unparalleled enlightenment. It was the awakening of the One. And that is the experience of awakening. There's no darkness to light. And everything is being perceived in this same space. And there's no enlightened and there's no unenlightened. Thank you. You're welcome. Janet says, so beautifully articulated tonight. Thank you, GP. Much love from Scotland. You're so welcome, Janet. Chrissy says, thank you, G. Anne says, thank you, G. Great satsang. Chrissy says, no one sees him except himself. No one reaches him except himself. And no one knows him except himself. He knows himself through himself. He sees himself by means of himself. No one knows him but him. That's from Balyani, what I mentioned last week. And yes, awareness is aware of awareness. Only awareness can be aware of awareness. If you are aware, you are awareness. Period. There can't be two. There can't be this awareness, aware of that awareness. Right? Awareness, by its nature, is simply awareness. So the one who wakes up is not the you think you are. It is the one who wakes up. God wakes up to himself. That's Sufi terms. No one sees him except him, because consciousness is the only thing that can see. Therefore, that which sees themselves as consciousness is consciousness, and sees the false sense of self as the false sense of self is consciousness. And that's you. That's all you've ever been. So it's always God that awakens to God. It's not you awakening to it. A sense, a finite you, a person waking up. The ultimate reality wakes up from the dream of being a person. Oh, so beautiful. Thank you for the great time of being with wisdom. Much love. Thank you, Ava. Thanks again and good night. Love and blessings to all. Whosoever knows their Lord. When you say the one, it reminds me of the Matrix. Not the same one. The one. The one in which even the Matrix, the Matrix was a wonderful movie. It was really indicative. But they got out of one Matrix into another. The true one is beyond all of it. Absolutely beyond everything. Gone completely and totally beyond. That's the ultimate wisdom. Thank you all. Love you all. Thank you all for being here, and let's do it again next week. Namaste.